Widow is the 24th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the first film to start Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel movies are back!
It's been 84 years.
Following the events of Captain America Civil War, Natasha Romanoff finds herself on the run and forced to confront a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Romanoff must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationships left in her wake long before she became an Avenger. I think a lot of us have been clamoring for a Black Widow movie for years, and we finally got it, but she's dead. So obviously this is a prequel taking place in between the events of Civil War and Infinity War, and we're once again following Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow and Natasha, and once again Scarlett Johansson gives a really good performance as Black Widow. With each passing movie in the MCU that Black Widow is in, Scarlett Johansson has gotten increasingly better in the role, and she has felt a lot more comfortable in the role as time has gone on. And I also like the way that the character has evolved, and seeing where her story ended in Endgame, it was interesting to see where her character was in this movie. She's really alone. She's not really tied to any team or any affiliation. She's just alone, and she might have some colleagues that help her. So it was, in a way, a breath of fresh air to see something slightly different coming out of the MCU in terms of where these characters actually are in the timeline at this very moment. David Harbour is also really good as Red Guardian. He adds a lot of comic relief. He's one of those actors that can really do that. Rachel Weisz is really good as Melinda, a mother figure to Black Widow. I thought they could have done a little bit more with her, but for the most part, she serves her role. She's a serviceable character, but by far, the big standout in the movie, and I think almost everybody has unanimous praise for her, Florence Pugh. Man, enough cannot be said about Florence Pugh in this movie. She is a scene stealer. Just coming in, wrecking house, helping Black Widow. I've seen a lot of people say that it feels like Natasha takes a backseat to Florence Pugh's character, Yelena, in this movie. I think there's a good balance there. And the back and forth banter between the two characters, it's not really a rivalry, but there's a sisterly bond there. I thought that was handled really well. The entire family dynamic with these four characters was, honestly, other than Florence Pugh, I mean, movie wife, come on, the best parts of the movie. Anytime it cut away from the action or it cut away from the story and we were dealing with family drama, that's where I was legitimately hooked. And speaking of being hooked, the first 10 or so minutes of this movie, I was like, oh shit, like, oh, whoa, we're doing something completely different here. I was glued to the screen, especially in the opening credits. Yeah, there's opening credits in this movie. First time in a long time a Marvel movie has had opening credits, and it really set the mood for the movie. I was actually really intrigued to see how this was all going to go down, because the first 10 minutes is really this like dark, somber, really serious movie, and I was hoping that the whole movie would actually be like that. Up through that credit scene and up to a certain point in the movie, I think we've seen it in the trailer. It's that scene where Natasha meets Yelena, they get into that brief scuffle. To that point in the movie, I said to myself, this might be the most dark, mature, and closest to an R rating we will ever get in the MCU. They almost took it there, and I wish that they had, because the rest of the movie, story-wise and some other aspects, really let me down, unfortunately. It's not a bad movie. It's just, it could have been more. For me, the story was pretty weak. There's something that's going on in the first 45 minutes that, honestly, it comes back around, but it feels inconsequential and just so minimal. It doesn't feel like the stakes are that high in terms of what they're actually trying to do. It's when we actually have to go to a place where, or they're trying to get to a place where I started to get invested in the story, and by then it felt like it had taken a long time to get to that point. And I wish that the movie had just focused on where they were trying to go a lot more and actually had it setting there a lot more, because that was the story that I wanted to see. And unfortunately, this story gets pushed by the wayside to deal with family drama, which again, I did like, but also this what feels like an inconsequential side quest to begin the movie. The story never grabbed me, and just for a while, I kept saying to myself, "Okay, is this gonna go anywhere? Is this going anywhere? Just okay, finally we're out of here." It's weird because once we get to a place in the second half of the movie, I totally forgot that what we were dealing with in the first half was actually part of the movie. And then when that came back up, I was said to myself, "Oh shit, I totally forgot about that. Like what do those things do again?" I don't know, it just felt so minimalistic to me, and I think it could have been handled a lot better. And by the time we get to the place where I was hoping most of the movie would take place, I just thought it was a bit too little too late. The movie itself, not too little too late. Not necessarily. Yes, this movie probably should have came out in like 2014, 2015. Should have had this movie a long time ago. I didn't necessarily have that feeling watching this movie. It was more of how the story progressed. I just felt as if it felt so minimal. Once we got to that place, it expanded a little bit more, but even then, it just wasn't what I wanted to see. You know, and I get subverting expectations can be a good thing. Many movies have done this in the past that I have praised. I'm not going to name them all, and I have actually loved a lot of those movies. I'm a huge supporter of challenging audience members and subverting expectations, but when it comes to things that were referenced in previous MCU movies that we had heard about with Black Widow, I expect a lot of that to be in a Black Widow movie, and some of that just felt like it fell by the wayside, or it was just totally forgotten about or not developed enough. And when it comes to not developing things enough, I think a lot of that has to do with the villain. Because I'm just going to tell you right now, the villains of this movie are the worst MCU villains to date. No cap. No, I'm not joking. This makes Malekith and Thor the Dark World look like Thanos. No joke. Taskmaster is literally the biggest wasted opportunity for a villain in the MCU. Taskmaster should have been so much better than it was. They had such a great concept and idea with Taskmaster, and I think it was ripped right from the comics. Again, I don't read the comics, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was ripped right from the comics, where Taskmaster can mimic the moves of the Avengers because Taskmaster has been studying those moves of the Avengers. But every time Taskmaster appears in the movie, it's every action scene you've seen from the 68 trailers that have been released, and it just feels like Taskmaster shows up to wreak havoc for 20-second fights. For a character that can mimic the moves of the Avengers, there could have been a lot more, and Ray Winstone plays another villain named Dreykov. I don't even have words to describe this guy, other than pretty much a little weasel. He's barely in the movie. Look, you have two main villains in this movie. I would think that the presence would be felt. You know me, I'm gonna bring up James Bond on this channel. The way that they handled Dreykov in this movie is the same way that Spectre handled Blofeld or Oberhauser in Spectre. He shows up one scene early on, and then he's gone for most of the movie, and then he comes back in the last third of the movie, and his big plan is revealed, and he's not as menacing as the movie thinks he is. And yeah, that's Ray Winstone's character Dreykov in this movie. And not to mention, he's not even really in a scene in the beginning. You just see brief glimpses of the guy, and he doesn't even talk until probably about an hour and 45 minutes into the movie. What a great villain. I mean, come on. How can you be worse than Malekith? I thought the Dark World slander was still going to be a thing. The Dark World actually looks like an Oscar winner compared to this. And that's not me saying Black Widow's bad, but those were the two biggest aspects of the movie that I was really looking forward to the most. I was really looking forward to seeing what Taskmaster was going to be able to do and what the story was going to entail, if it was going to be about Budapest or a lot of the Red Room. The Red Room is involved, but not to the extent that I thought it was going to be, and that was a major letdown for me. This felt like a Phase 1 Marvel movie for me. It felt like it was the Marvel Cinematic Universe still in its beginning stages, trying to find its footing. This was back in the days when Marvel had weak villains. I thought we had moved past this phase, at least for phase 3. Are we getting back to this in phase 4? Let's, please, I hope not. It felt like it was trying to mimic Captain America the Winter Soldier. It's just the Winter Soldier did it a lot better. And it's a way better movie. There's no style to this movie. It feels like a copy and paste movie. I still say I think you can enjoy Black Widow with 3/4 worth of a bucket of popcorn, but just barely. I don't think it's a terrible movie. I gave it a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, but it is in the bottom 5 in my Marvel Cinematic Universe ranking, and that is not good. This is the first time in a long time I have felt this mixed about a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, probably since Thor: The Dark World. So 8 years. Wow. Black Widow deserved a little bit better, honestly. What did you guys think of Black Widow? Maybe you feel differently than me, so drop me some feedback in the comment section below. I will leave my link to my website in the description below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. You are the best. My name is Alex Madden, and I'll see you at the movies somewhere.